Hello again. So in this video I want to speak a wee bit about things like anxiety, depression, stress, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, because that again is a lot of what's going on in our societies with regards to poor mental health. So I'll start with self-confidence, because to me there's a lot of difference that happens in the way that we actually say a word. So for me, when people talk about confidence, what they're talking about, or a lack of confidence, they're talking about a lack of self-confidence, the ability to confide in ourselves. Lack of self-confidence, lack of self-confidence, the ability to confide in ourselves. So self-belief, in a sense. And so when we don't have self-confidence, self-confidence, we confide in everybody else. So we've got some scenario, some situation that's emergent for us, something that's causing us psychological disturbance, something to be resolved. And so we'll turn to other people to get their opinions and their thoughts about what we should do, because we can't confide inwardly and trust what's going on inside ourselves to inform us in such a way that we can then move forward and make any decisive decision or action or movement. So that's also slightly different from thinking. Again, and like I said on another video, in the sense that we can have a scenario and we can sit and dwell on it and think about it and come up with a logical, rational idea, concept, whatever, to move forward. But that's different from confidence. Confidence is something that we actually feel within ourselves. It's a bit deeper and a bit different. So that's a wee bit on self-confidence. In terms of anxiety, so that's confidence and self-esteem, slightly. Anxiety, again, then, as I see it, and I'm not saying that what I'm offering is right and what anybody else is offering is wrong. I'm just offering where I'm at with these things just now, given my type of training, the psychospiritual training, and having my years of experience of working with people. One aspect of it, let's say, is what I'm offering, or a slightly different way of looking at it. Anxiety, then, people often experience anxiety because they're not in the present moment, and they're concerned about something that's in the future, like going for a job interview, and going to school, and going to work, anything. And we start thinking about it ahead of time. Again, because there's some lack of self-confidence to some extent is relevant to that. And so we're kind of worried to some extent about it. And that can be the very basic kind of type of anxiety, but that can again become very chronic, in that we're just in an anxious state completely, and we're running basically on fight and flight mode, and we're never really present, we're never still, we're not able to receive our own inner guidance and intuitions, etc., because we're just in that completely almost manic state of anxiety. Now again, the anxiety, along slightly with maybe the lack of self-esteem, I think is becoming more prevalent in our society, because, again, as I was saying in my first video, if I keep this more about adults, sort of teenagers upwards, people aren't going out in the world and doing the things they used to do and getting the experiences and interactions that they used to have. A lot of people are here nowadays, and they're interacting with games and social media, and it's a completely different world. But if I stick more to then the context of work, when there was more people out actually working and interacting and learning and putting mileage on this ability to self-confide, where you're constantly in situations and making decisions, often work related and socially related in terms of relationships with each other, particularly in the workplace, because that's where people were most of their day. we developed this ability to be able to trust ourselves and make decisions, and if they were right or wrong, we learned from them. But that's not how society is, and so it's hardly surprising that we're suffering the likes of anxiety and lack of self-confidence. And then in terms of that self-esteem, the self-esteeming is where because we've not got somebody else esteeming us and saying that we're doing okay and we're doing well, more so when we're younger, or children and young adults, and praising us for what we are achieving. And again, if we're not doing stuff that has any achieving element to it, it's hard for people to do that. We then have to self-esteem, so we have our own inner higher guidance, let's call it, that esteems us at the egoic level to make us feel better, and tries to build us up, because it realises it's healthier for us rather than move towards the depression that can come from a lot of these things. So the depression itself, then, I get a lot of people that will come and see me that will be on antidepressants, and gradually they usually come off the antidepressants, and in many cases they're not actually really depressed. When you sit in the presence of somebody that's depressed, you know, compared with sitting in the presence of somebody that's been told they're depressed, because they're in a bit of a depression to do with something rather than really depressed. You absolutely feel the difference. And so in some cases, some people that have been put on antidepressants that aren't really depressed, in my personal opinion, and I'm not trained to say that as such, so I'll own that. But some of the people I've worked with are actually very sensitive, and they are what we call in the heart intelligence line of work that I do, me spacers. And a me spacer, although I don't really like that terminology, refers to someone that's in childhood learned to become very attuned to their environment in order to stay safe. So it was maybe a very insecure household. Maybe mum and dad were always arguing, there was fighting going on, it was, I don't know, whatever, all sorts of traumas and kind of abuses or whatever going on. And so it was in a very unsafe environment. And so in that situation, our kind of neurological defence system will be on alert all the time. And so what happens is that we learn to read energy, not necessarily consciously, but we learn to read the energetic space around us to stay safe. And as we then move into later childhood and adulthood, we still run out of that conditioning, that system. We're very vigilant to the energy of people and energy around us, and that can be quite tiring for some people. Well, it can be tiring for most people that are running like that. And so these people are actually picking up everybody else's energy, and that can be quite overwhelming for ourselves, for the inner being that we are. And so what can then happen to manage that is that we start to shut down a bit, and it's in the shutting down that we can then go flat, which then feels like it's depressed, that we're in spirit, we're depressed, the spirit of who we are. So we're not like some buoyant jack-in-the-box spring, when it pops out, we're in its depressed state, not really engaging too much with life, because when we do, we pick up so much and we're running everybody that's around us rather than just running ourselves. So that's a wee bit about some of the stuff as I'm looking at it from these contexts of depression, anxiety, esteem, etc., and confidence. But in saying that, I'm going to make one more video probably before this group starts. And although I've made these first 3 videos and spoke about a lot of the stuff that affects mental health, we're not really going to be looking at a lot of that necessarily per se in the space. And so this final video will give you a better idea for when I make the next one. The final video is going to be more about what the space will look like and what will happen in the space when we come together, and the value of people just being able to share something that's going on for them in life without somebody else being there to kind of tell them what's wrong or how to fix it or make it better for them or make it go away. Because there is something in simply owning and sharing what's going on inside us and stirring us up just to get that out of yourself can often be enough to make quite a difference. But as I've said already, I'm trying to keep these videos to around the 10 minutes. So as I say, that's a little bit on, that stuff, the anxiety, depression-y stuff that a lot of people are talking about out there in society. And the angle that I come at that from is more of a psychospiritual context or a psychospiritual pathology rather than a psychopathology. The psychopathology being that as adults we suffer from the disturbances of childhood, whereas a psychospiritual pathology says that's actually not quite why we're suffering. Why we're suffering is because we're trying to untangle ourselves from those ways, and it's in the disturbances arise within us so that we can look at them, work them through and untangle ourselves from them, and then self-realise, like move forward in life, mature, etc., and stop functioning at that level. And so it's this kind of wicking or calling or pulling forward that is the psychospiritual context that is my training, in the sense of rather than just saying it's because this stuff happened in childhood, etc., that I became the way I am and I suffer the things I suffer. And again, to repeat myself, we're saying there's more to it than that. That's not actually what's causal. What's causal is the fact that you're trying to kind of re-purify yourself and get back to being the way that you would have been when you first come into the world before all of that psychological adaptation. Bye now.